There is a turntable that stands time. A turntable that has been around for nearly 70 years. A turntable that isn't based on belt drive. That doesn't have a direct drive. A turntable based on idler drive. Idler movement. The idler gear. A turntable that was conceived and built to perfection. Deutsch perfection. What am I talking about? His Majesty, the EMT 930. Let's go. Okay guys, welcome back to Dialogue on analog music reproduction. A few of you guys noticed that I mentioned in one of my past videos that I had said goodbye to my Kuzma, my beloved Kuzma. I love that turntable, it's a great turntable, but, as I also said in other videos and comments here and there, the idler type of motor of drive of a turntable. It's the ideal, hence the pun of the title, type of mechanism. I explained this actually, once again in another video, because idler turntables are effortless. They deliver sound in a different way, especially when you consider that there is the dragging, the compression, the pressure of the cantilever of the stylus on the record. That changes a little bit when you have a belt drive. The optimal sound is delivered by a direct drive. I agree with Jonathan O'May, Chief. He did a wealth of videos describing these characteristics, and I always had this since my review a few years ago of the Dual, the 1019, I think. In any case, here is a link. You're going to find all the links in the video description. And in that case, that was my first idler type of turntable. The sound that was created by that was just something completely different at another level, in my opinion, better, okay? So I always wanted to try, I always wanted to own. As you know, I am a vintage guy, but when something is modern and convincing, no problem. But in most cases, when you turn back and look what engineers and technicians did in the past, you really have to bow. And before you have to understand, and then you realize how good a few things and how well they were made. For example, this incredible engineering. Okay, but we're going to explore now a little bit this turntable through its main characteristics. We're going to go through 6 main points, and I'll try to give you an idea of what is behind the EMT concept. Let's start. Okay, point number 1, the concept. Let's start from that. A lot of people are not going to like EMT because EMT is a fine-tuned package. Every component works at its best together with the other components, conceived, designed, and created by EMT, meaning that it has its turntable, it has its preamp, it has its mat, it has also its cartridges, it has its cables, it has its shock frame. All the different components put together create an incredible experience. Because this is a professional type of turntable. We have to keep this in mind. It's a broadcast turntable. And usually broadcast turntables have their downsides because they are meant for that. They have to be quick, they have breaks. Clearly, it's not something perfectly matching a home environment or a casual listening. We also have to realize that when things were done in the past, I would say, but in general, let's say EMT created a series, several incredible turntables that had to work 24 hours. They had to work at least for 10 years nonstop. Even the one I purchased, and I'll tell you a little bit more from whom and where, this should work without any problems from 10 years, even if I keep it going nonstop the whole day and night. Yes, they were built to last and to work. As a few engineers that worked with MT said, there are no weak points. Everything was conceived, created at its maximum potential. No expense limit in the creation and design of this. Something that today you just don't find unless you go to the extreme high end, meaning 10 times the cost of this. But we'll get to it. This is just to say that we have this special conception behind EMT, but there are ways to tweak, to change some things, because we audiophiles like to put our things, test, try out other things. So actually, no problem. Not everything you can't explore and do everything, okay? That is true, but a few things you can, as we will see during the video. Let's proceed. Okay, point number 2 actually is just a mention. I want to say that I'm not going to go through the EMT history, okay? How things were born and developed. I did a dedicated video because in the past I also had an EMT 938, which unfortunately I sold. Actually, I exchanged it. And not only that, took also some money for this baby. So here is a link to that video. Once again, you're going to find the link also here below in the video description. Let's proceed. Okay, point number 3. This is a huge point because I'm going to tell you all the different characteristics and its conception and the evolution that it went through, okay? So let's start saying that this is the small brother of the humongous, huge, gigantic, incredible 927. Yes, the EMT 927, which was so huge because they were using a lot of times in broadcast situations, in radios, transcription records, meaning those, if I don't go wrong, 16-inch records, huge, that had an entire program on them. Hence the need of a big and reliable turntable. And, that was used, and it was a reference throughout the world. Not in every single environment, but pretty much. The problem was that not everyone could afford something like that, because even today, there aren't that many existing, actually. It was extremely, extremely expensive, as you can imagine. Let's remember that EMT, all the EMT turntables were never meant to be sold to the public, to the consumer, okay? These were directly sold to radio companies, TV stations, and things like that. So after a while, after a few years, actually starting in, I have a lot of notes here. You're going to see me looking at them frequently. In 1956, they introduced finally the EMT 930, which is very similar to the 927, but in a smaller package. It can be moved around easier. It's clearly cheaper, even though the production costs weren't that much different. Lower, yes, but not incredibly lower. Nevertheless, they were able to furnish a good price to people, still very high, and afterwards we're gonna see how much. And it was just easier to deal with. Also because a lot of people needed to do special effects. So as you can imagine, at that point, the cost would go much higher. And I think this is the ideal format also for a home. A lot of people have the 927. Lucky them, you need a lot of space. But even if you have to move it around, then it's a nightmare. So I think this is the optimal solution, and the quality is just as good. The 927 is better, clearly. The whole thing is so heavy, the mass, that helps a lot, as you can imagine. But this is absolutely not the best, we could say, among the best turntables out there. Both of them, 927 and the 930. And this went on, the production went on all the way to 1985, guys. That is 30 years, almost 30 years. That is a long time, especially in that period of time where there was a rapid evolution of technology. They kept this for almost 30 years. And starting from 1958, so just 2 years after, we have the stereo version. Because in the beginning it was only mono with the connections for the preamp, integrated preamp, and clearly the cartridge just conceived for mono. But it was exactly in that period of time that stereo was finally exploded. So they rapidly modified the different characteristics, the electronics, to produce a stereo version. In fact, the correct name as this one is the 930 ST stereo. Okay, let's try to say something about the price, which I think it's interesting. Now, I was able to find the price in 1971, which was around 5,700 or something like that marks, the currency in Germany. I did a rapid calculation in euro, then dollars, with the inflation calculator. And the price, if we compare it to today, it would be, in today's money, inflation calculation, it was $13,000. For that time, a lot. Especially if you consider, for example, that a Technics SL1100 went for $2,700. Okay, so you have a scale of how much this was expensive, also considering all the different elements inside. Very robust. Okay, as we said, the motor, huge motor. I mean, if you take a look at the motors we find now, even the nice fancy ones, it's nothing compared to this or the 927. They're huge babies like that, washing machine motors. And it's, as I said, an idler type of turntable, meaning that there is a gear, that there is a wheel that creates the rotation, very steady, and just a different type of rotation, much more stable and precise, constant. It doesn't change even when, as I said, you have some interference from the stylus or the different kinds of weight of the record and the tone arms and things like that. It just goes ahead. It doesn't stop. And this goes at 33, 45, and 78 RPM, as you can imagine. So you can cover everything. Very cool. There is a very heavy platter with a dedicated mat. There's also a special mat, but we will talk about this at the end, because I'm going to give you a few hints on what to find to really optimize every single element of this turntable if you're interested. And another important feature is clearly the tone arm. In the beginning, as you can imagine, they did not have their own tone arm. In the beginning, they had some models made by Ortofon. They had the mono version. The beginning was called the RF229. And then, immediately after, as we said, they had to create a stereo version because of the connections inside, which is called the RMA229. And finally, in 1971, they created their own tone arm, the 929, which is almost a 10-inch tone arm. And just a few years later, in 1974, they created also the famous banana, the 997, which was clearly adopted on the EMT 927. Although you can use it also here. There is a special solution if you're interested. Stay tuned and wait for the end of the video for the last point. Okay, another important part is dedicated to the preamp. The preamp, as I said, was part of the package, okay? Even if we have to think that in the past, there wasn't actually a dedicated phono preamp. That's something very modern concept, actually. You usually had your amplifier, integrated amplifier, your receiver, where you had also, or a dedicated preamplifier, where you had a phono stage. But obviously, they needed a reliable, with specific characteristics and specs type of preamplifier. And immediately, the package came with the mono version called EMT 139. Very soon after, they also did a solid-state version mono, which is called the EMT 155. Just a few years after, as you can imagine, they also created the stereo versions. And there is the tube version, which is the 139 mono, but also the stereo version, all tube, and specific transformers for the EMT, for the preamp. Fantastic. I really want to try that. I don't have it. I do have an idea that I want to explore that sound. And it is extremely sought after, as you can imagine. And when it's available, it goes for absurd, just crazy prices, like $13,000, $15,000 or euro. Insane, clearly, because people want the original. Fortunately, there is someone doing a very similar thing, an identical thing. Once again, we'll talk about this in the end. So, apart from that, we rapidly changed to the solid state with the 155, and afterwards it was only that, and even the 153, which it wasn't anymore discrete components, but made with ICs. So, the quality, unfortunately, from that side went down. And in fact, one of the main mods that people do is to use, obviously reasonably, an external preamp, also due to the costs. Please remember that if you want to use the preamp, or at least fit it underneath, you need the early version, okay? The one with the logo on the bottom, meaning on the lower part. When you find EMTs with the logo on the upper part, we'll see that afterwards when we take a close-up. Those are later models, and you cannot fit the preamp. You're going to have to put it somewhere else. So keep that in mind. Okay, so another important feature that came out in 1976 is the shock frame absorber. This baby right here. Now, this is a new product, something that is made by Studio Technic Douche, which we'll explain better afterwards who they are. Very nice. A lot of people think that the original is better, but since that time, since that phase, there was something like that. Otherwise, before, there was just practically a normal console, because the shock absorber decouples completely the turntable. Very useful. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the head shells and cartridges. Let me remove the cover, because clearly, as we said in the beginning, one problem with EMT is especially focused on the cartridge, because they have a special attachment. They don't have the classic SME type. They have the EMT type. And in fact, I'm going to unscrew this. This is an original new version EMT. The older ones looked more like this. I think you can see it. But I will tell you in a while what we're talking about. In fact, just after a few years, EMT in 1962 introduced its first head shell, the TSD-12, and subsequently the famous and legendary TSD-15, okay, which has a chassis of the head shell, let's say the head shell, very similar to this. And EMT is very recognizable because the head shell is the cartridge, okay? Now here you see something else inside because I put it inside, but usually you had the whole thing is the head shell. And in fact, apart from this, which is just an empty head shell, which I put a low quality cartridge to do some experiments. Here is the new version, because EMT is still present today and does incredible things. They also do amazing head shells. A lot of people, in fact, want EMT cartridges, let's call them, not head shells, for their turntables, regardless if they have an EMT turntable. They're so good. Clearly, they continue to do the classic version where, once again, the cartridge is also the head shell, as this model you can see right here. And it has a special type of attachment. This is the TSD-15 modern version, which is a little more narrow. SFL, the superfine line, okay? There's lots of different variations. There's a mono version. There's a spherical version for the records done before the 80s, the first years of the 80s. And also a very high level, high quality type with a boron cantilever. And they're developing more and more, also for non-EMT attachments. Now, someone would say, oh, okay, that's it. I'm done. I can't use, I can't buy this type of tone arm. What can I do? Well, you have two solutions, actually, if you want to change cartridges. First, a lot of people put a different type of tone arm. And you can put perfectly the Ortofon versions we said before, the 229, RMA, the stereo version. And some claim that it's even better than the EMT version, this one, the 929. I never tried it, but clearly I want the original. I want the package, since this is considered still today one of the best tone arms ever created, okay? I'm not saying that. A lot of people say that. So, first solution, you can change the tone arm. Second solution is to find, always from Studio Technik Douche, a special kind of head shell. This is a head shell, actually, a free head shell where you can put any kind of cartridge you want. Yes, because it has an EMT attachment, and more or less, I can't say every kind, but most cartridges fit in here. So if you want to use this different type of head shell to put your own cartridges, clearly you're going to need an alignment protractor. And fortunately, there is someone making them. Here is an example that you can easily find on eBay. Very cool. Not too expensive. That perfectly allows you to calibrate mainly the overhang, I would say, because the rest is perfect already, the azimuth and things like that, of your cartridge with two specific points. And at that point, you're sure that you can use any type of cartridge. Already with their own cartridges, the sound is stellar. The cartridge itself I'm talking about. This here, as you know, this was for some time my reference. Very, very good. The Stratos by Pure Fidelity, which I adore. And the EMT is even better. And it costs less. Yes, it does. I forgot to mention that the 929 EMT tone arm can also be regulated in its height, meaning that the VTA, the vertical tracking angle of your cartridge of choice, can actually be fine-tuned. And if you want to put back the tone arm the way it's supposed to be with an EMT cartridge, remember everything is fine-tuned and calibrated, you just have to use the appositely created gauge. At that point, you're sure that everything is back into position. Okay, guys. For our next point, let's take a look now to the physical characteristics and the operation characteristics. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, guys. So let's take a look now to the main characteristics, the main features of the turntable. Here we have our nice dust cover, which I will tell you about afterwards. Let's remove it. Here we go. And here we have this special and fantastic platter of the EMT 930. Now, I do want to almost reveal that this is not metal. Well, there's so much paint on it that it practically feels like and it looks like it. But actually it's bakelite. It's a special kind of plastic which, as I said, has a lot of this special metallized paint. So in the end, it's almost like a hybrid solution. It makes it lighter, and at the same time, it's sound dampened. It's very effective from that point of view. And in the end, at the touch, it's cold and pretty sturdy as metal in the end. Okay, now this is a mint, pristine version, copy I have, machine that I was able to find. So a lot of times you're going to find a little bit of scratches and things like that. That is perfectly normal because these are pretty old. They're starting to get old now. They have at least 40 years, more or less, at least. This is an early version. You can notice it from this. Here we see the EMT logo, the stereo version. The first models were done with the logo here, and you have up here the extra head shell keeper. Afterwards, the logo moves here, and unfortunately, you lose also this feature. So that is also why I wanted an earlier one. Also because the earlier version is capable of housing beneath the EMT preamplifier if you want to use it. In fact, here, as you can see, there's nothing. And usually here instead you should see some commands, some other two levers, which are used mainly to fix the equalization, the curve. And those are directly connected to the preamplifier below. For now, I decided that I wanted to use my own preamp. But usually, as we said, EMT is a package. It has everything tuned. So sooner or later, I am going to try the preamplifier. But for now, there isn't, and they were very nice to put this so you don't see the little holes here below. Okay, let's try to take a closer look to the commands. So as we said, here we have place for two head shells. Very nice, very easy. Let's always remember that this is a broadcast turntable. And in fact, here we have the commands for the brake, meaning that it's completely loose at the first position, engaged at the second, and the third instead if you want to use it remotely, because sometimes you wanted to put a record had to start with nobody inside the area of the room. And that way you could via a special connection. And in fact, this light turns on when there is the brake engaged. I have detached it because I have a special platter. We will talk about that of the platter afterwards, okay? And I'll explain why. In any case, this is the brake. In order to start and stop immediately, that it was necessary, like the Technics, for example, for broadcasting purposes. Here we have the knob for the 3 speeds, 33 1/3, 45, and 78, which clearly moves the idler wheel at a different gear. That is how it engages a different speed. Very cool. Here you have the operation knob. Here it's completely shut down. Here it's on standby. And this way it's rotating. And you know that it is turned on also because maybe you noticed that up here we have a small little light, which is a stroboscopic light, because on the edge of the platter of the original, but also on this version of the platter, you have clearly the little dots that indicate if the platter is rotating at the correct speed. It takes about 15 minutes to warm up because this was supposed to work 24 hours a day, more or less. So it had to work, or at least for many, many hours. So they knew that it was nothing to invest like half an hour to make everything perfectly nice and tuned up and ready to go. And at that point, just leave it on the whole day. Okay, then what else? Here we have a very handy light, which can, well, I have to turn it on, otherwise it doesn't work. I think you can see it. See? Because it's perfectly tuned, calibrated to enlight the grooves. Because if you put a record, okay, you can perfectly see not only the dirt, I think you can see it from the camera, because all of a sudden all the little dust particles on the surface of the grooves are perfectly evident. And at that point, you can also see exactly where a track starts and ends in order to set it up properly. That is also clearly something oriented to a broadcast purpose, obviously. Okay, so I don't have the brake, or at least you need the normal platter, the original platter to engage it. So you're gonna have, that's one of the downside, we could say. You're gonna have to brake it with your fingers, no problem, or just simply wait that the platter ends its rotation. I mean, nothing too bad, nothing too serious. Here we have this mono, double mono, stereo in the combination, output for headphones. Very cool. But even this, clearly, as you can imagine, it's engaged. You can use it if you are using the preamp by EMT. In fact, also for the stroboscopic light, you should need to have a preamp to let the electric current reach that part of the turntable. But you can buy a false plug that closes the circuit, and like I have, and engages the light as soon as you turn it on here. Okay, so you can't use it if you don't have the preamp. Here we have clearly the up and down lever. Mechanical, very simple, but useful because you can lower it down very slowly. Here we have the fantastic 929 tone arm by EMT. And as you can see, I think you can see it here, there is a little magnet which helps you to fix it, not very strong obviously, but to fix the arm so it doesn't move, it doesn't bounce, because sometimes the arm just goes away, you're taking it away very quickly, and you don't want it to bounce back. And this is very useful, and also to keep it in place clearly. Then you have all the commands of the tone arm. Here you have the counterweight, which you can just simply screw it up and screw it back. While here you can fine-tune the tracking force of the cartridge. And then here you can regulate the anti-skating force, which is connected with a little string that goes here behind. It's very famous and renowned, and still today, even the new EMT models are very similar to this model, because this is an excellent tone arm. Here we have the 45 RPM adapter, the original one, with this little knob to keep it in place. And that's it. Let's try to take a look beneath it. Okay, here we have this huge platter right here. Let's try to remove this. You have to be careful because there's the oil inside the shaft. But I do want it to show you, oh la la, the beauty, the fantastic beauty. I think you can even appreciate the size of the motor. Wow, guys, just wow. See here, I think you can see it. Wait, you can see, let's turn it off. See how the speed works? Very cool. Hey guys, I forgot to mention one little thing, so I wanted to add this little piece of video. In fact, a lot of times people ask me, what are these little signs right here? Well, as we said, this is a broadcast turntable. Once you found the exact start of a record with the needle, starting from this little point right here, you have to turn the record according to the speed. And at that point, when you start, you're going to have an immediate reproduction of the first track. Okay? That is why we have those. Very cool. Okay, just a very quick shot of this from this angle, just to show you how this is perfectly decoupled with this shock frame. This is the new version. There's also the old one. Some say that the old one is even better. In any case, this needs to be fixed when
when you have to transport it. And clearly this is a huge advantage. I mean, EMT always have to be installed in a frame of some type. Better if decoupled like this one. Forgot to say that below there's a small little screw that you can use to fine tune, to regulate the speed, okay? So every time you want, you can change the speed, almost like as a 1200 Technics, okay? And that's it.
Okay, guys, before talking about the mods and recommendations that I think are worthy to do here, I just want to speak a little bit about the sound, even though I already did here and there. The sound is very peculiar, meaning that it's different. It's just different from a belt drive immediately. It was evident with the Dual. It's even more clear here. And it just feels more natural, effortless. The things just open up. The reproduction does not have that fatigue. It doesn't have, I don't know, that artificial part of the sonics, especially when you're going into critical parts like closer to the inside, or when you have difficult type of cartridges. It just goes like a breeze. But as you know, I am transparent. I am 100% honest with you. Always remember that. That is my strength. If you ask me, is it worth? Because I spend a lot. Okay, it's useless to say a price because you can find them online for just a few $1,000. Then you have to refurbish it, clearly, because this is fully refurbished, okay? Fully refurbished and mint condition. So I did pay a premium dollar, but I wanted something almost new. Actually, it is. Never been used. But if you come over and say, Guido, but you had a fantastic turntable, the Kuzma. Is it that much better? I would say no, not a night and day difference. Absolutely. It's better? Yes, it is better. I like more the sound because of this naturalness. In fact, it's more correct to say it's different almost than better. That different, though, makes it better for me, okay? I think you're starting to understand what I mean. But considering the price, no, I don't think it's worth it. Because today, you need this to be perfectly functional with all that mechanisms inside. It has to really work well, because otherwise it does not have that fantastic sound. And for those high prices that they're asking for it, I don't think in the end it's worth it. If I would put probably money in other things or a more modest type of turntable. There's also even Guard. A lot of people are going to hate me for this, but you don't need to go at this verdicts. If you want the best of the best, yes, of course. But that best of the best, as the diminishing return law says, it's very subtle. I mean, it's not that big. Hence, in my opinion, once again, not worth it. Not for all that money. But if we take away the expense, this is clearly the best thing I've ever heard in my system, okay? Because that is what counts, not at fairs and things like that. In my system, considering the Technics, the clear audio, the other EMT, the Kuzma, and other things, RecoCut, other things you never saw on this channel before I started it, this is just something completely different and once again, very, very natural. Zero fatigue. How it's supposed to be. Okay, final point. Mods and recommendations. Okay, now, you have to know that out there are two main guys, we could say. Two main engineers that are still doing things for the old EMT, okay? The new EMT is something completely different. We're talking about the old EMT. They are still based in Lahr, where EMT was not born, but after just a few years, they went there and developed there. They are still there, and we have on one side Studio Technik Douche, now under the hands, very, very competent and very, very nice Benjamin Douche. his father was the person, the engineer working at EMT. And then also we have Hans Michel Fabricius at FabTech. Both of them offer various accessories, service to the turntables, etc., etc. I mean, they both offer similar things, but also different things. So I will try to let you know, give you some ideas of what is out there and what is really useful. So coming to Studio Technik Douche, as I said, you have the very nice, actually even FabTech has one, the external head shell, meaning the free head shell that you can attach whatever you want. They also sell a lot of EMTs ready at different tiers of considering what's inside, what's included, the condition of the chassis, and things like that. They also do some restoration. Clearly, they also do service. Even Michel Fabricius actually fully refurbished my EMT 938. He did an incredible job. So they're in their field. They're great guys, both of them. I talked before about an external arm board. That is something new that Fabricius put out, where it attaches practically here at this part here, meaning though that you need, if I don't go wrong, the first version of the EMT. Otherwise, you're going to have to punch holes in it in order to attach this arm board, where you can put a second arm. You can put the Banana, the 997, or a second arm, because clearly a lot of people want a dedicated arm for mono cartridges, even though it is rather easy to switch them, especially if you choose the EMT version. And they also, we could say, sell, even though they're not producing it, an incredible version of the EMT 139 stereo, which actually was conceived by a Dutch engineer, Hans van Vliet. I'll put the link also to his website, where he recreated, he says perfectly, 1-to-1, what is the modern version. This is going to be a modern version of the EMT preamp 139, because as we said before, it goes for insane prices, more than a turntable. So it doesn't make sense to get that. Go for an external one, or the ones that was created by this Dutch engineer. Okay, then what else? They also, Studio Technik Douche does also a very special thing. They recreated, because it was something done by EMT, the glass platter. This is the original plastic. Plexiglass? I don't remember. In any case, plastic mat. The original EMT one, okay? Which is very good. It's nice. It has felt. Not very crazy about that. At a certain point, EMT created a special glass platter that was used to test master tapes. When they had to do a confrontation, a comparison between a newly cut lacquer and a fresh batch of new records, and compare it to the master tape, the sonic qualities, they used this special type of glass platter, because that was the one that gave the maximum quality in the reproduction. Unfortunately, if you use it, and it's this one right here, you cannot use the brakes. But we don't care about the brakes. Yes, it's annoying that when you turn it off, you have to wait for a few rotations, or you have to stop it with your finger like that. And that's the only downside. But apart from that, here it is. Very similar, actually. Much more heavy. This is all glass. And here you have, I think you can hear that, you have this rubber type of mat, which is very, very good. Actually, one of my first videos was on turntable mats, which it's a little rough, but I highly suggest to take a look at that, because I discuss of the different types of mats, including and platters, because there is a strict connection. And there was these famous glass platters, which were inspired by this. Here is a link Once again, the links are also here below. So this is also something that Studio Technik Douche offers, and that is highly recommended. If you get an EMT 930, you have to get also this platter. Something else that Studio Technik Douche does is also a dedicated voltage regulator and converter, because you can rewire the turntable inside. But if you don't live in Europe and you have a different voltage, but most importantly, well, not most importantly, but also a different frequency, clearly, of the voltage, then it's better to buy this little box that they sell. Not only you can change the voltage, clearly, and have an optimal delivery of the power, but you can also do variations in the speed with it. So that's very cool, and that's also something that they're doing. Also, they're doing the strobe plug, we could say, that closes the circuit if you don't want to get an external preamp, but you do want to use the strobe light, which is a good idea. They sell this little plug that you just put it in, and at that point, you can use the strobe light. They also sell, Studio Technik Douche, very important, the cables, the tone arm cables that you need to attach directly the arm to an external preamp, okay? They have two versions. Actually, I did a video some time ago. So if you want to do by yourself this type of cable, because it is a little expensive, and if you're good soldering, if you're good to handle those little teeny wires, I highly recommend to check out my video. Here's a link. In fact, after that, this is a little anecdote. I know a guy that started to sell them on eBay thanks to my video. Yes, and he was very kind. He sent me a one for me because I wasn't that good in doing it, as you will see in that video, but the idea was correct. In fact, he captured it and made it his own. Okay, what else? Clearly, I would recommend a nice dust cover, because you ain't gonna have one. This is a very cool version, very expensive, unfortunately. I found this, there's a guy on eBay who sells them. I'll put his name here. As you can see, you have these curved parts, which are very cool, that perfectly go on the turntable and keep even the thickness very, contained, very slick. So once you've done the effort, might as well even get something like that. And apart from that, I can only say that you need a little bit of maintenance, because we're not going to use it 24 hours. You just have to check the oil once a year and add a little bit if it's not perfectly up to where it's supposed to be. And at a certain point, after a few years, also change clearly the rubber wheel, because that's something that is going to deteriorate sooner or later. Apart from that, sorry for this very long video, I also recommend to find the real manual, because there are some features that sometimes you don't find online, how things work, the wiring inside. It's always a good idea to find that. And then I highly recommend a book, which is in Italian, English, and German, done by Stefano Pasini, Deutsch Perfection, which he talks in depth of all the history of EMT, of all the models, the impact on society. Very cool. He also has a fantastic website, which I will link here below. And Stefano is considered one of the maximum experts. And Fabtech also collaborated to Fabricius to the creation of this volume. Very, very cool. And that's it. I'm not going to let you listen to anything today, too long the video, but in the next video, so look for it, I'm going to do my annual video on the best rock albums of a specific year. Clearly, we are in 2024. It's going to be the 1974 video, and I'll use this for all the needle drops. Thank you again for watching, and remember, clearly, especially today, that music is born analog. Ciao! Ciao, belli! Well, guys, if you're enjoying my videos and you're enjoying my channel, please consider to subscribe by clicking the black and white logo here below. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode and you will become a true member of the analog community.